Hello, I'm Olive from 7th Memory and welcome to another devlog. This week we're taking a break from our usual game to talk about our entry into the GMTK Game Jam 2025. This year we decided to commit to the Game Jam and over the course of just a few days make an entire game from scratch. Now, the link to play the game will be in the description. It's on itch.io. You can play it for free. And today, I want to talk about how we came up with our ideas for making this game, the actual process of game making, and what our final product was like. It's a pretty different process from the kind of long-term game making we've been doing and talking about on this channel, but we think it went pretty well and are pretty happy with our end product. So I wanted to take this week to just talk about our experience and share our little game. So let's start with the actual theme for the jam. Now, with a game jam like this, as soon as the timer starts, which in this case was last Wednesday at 1 p.m., it starts with the reveal of the theme. This year, the theme was loop. Now, that's a pretty broad theme. We weren't entirely sure what to do with this, so we started by just completely spitballing any idea we could think of, anything at all. Our first idea was to bring back an old project of ours that we have since abandoned and refactored into our current long-term RPG game, but we decided that wasn't original enough. We abandoned that project for a reason, and we decided to go with something else. One of our next few ideas was to do something related to music. When we actually decided, okay, this idea would be alright, we started by thinking about what the game would be like. This music idea came from when you loop a song, when you just hit it to repeat forever. Like, okay, well, if you can loop music, what the actual game would be like. What are you doing? Well, we would probably want the player to be making some sort of music. So we ended up taking inspiration from Papa's games, like Papa's Pizzeria or something like that, and decided to build on that as our core gameplay loop. And then we built on that by adding various musical details. So we had this idea of what if people are showing up and asking you to make music for them using little loops. Let's say you're given various short looping tracks of music and you have to put them together and give them certain things like a certain tempo or a certain key and use that to fulfill people's requests. So what I mean when I say it's sort of like a Papa's game where people come in, they give you requests and you fulfill them for money that you can then spend on other stuff. Now, once we had this idea of, okay, that's the core gameplay loop and what you're doing, we're like, well, how do we make this fun? What exactly does the player do? Do we have the tools we need? So we'd already had an idea for a while for some sort of operating system type game. Think Hypnospace Outlaw. So we decided to build in this sort of operating system vibe into our game, to have what the player would be physically doing to be just interacting with the computer screen. In terms of making it fun, well, we knew that we needed to make sure actually just playing around in the music editor was like a fun thing for the player to do. So we really prioritized sitting down and making sure that works, that the player could just drag and drop in little loops and mess with it, and whatever they were making would sound good or at least funny. And we also made sure that we could find a good MIDI player. That was key to making this all work. We knew that we would need some way for Godot to take in MIDI files, which is what we would be exporting our loops as, and then playing those in a way that would make sense with what the player wanted. The second we found this MIDI thing, we knew that this was a project that was feasible. But then we decided to just, for a second, shelve it and start to think about other ideas. Some of our scrapped ideas included a take on just the phrase out of the loop. Thought it might be something fun and silly if perhaps you're given all sorts of information in some sort of corporate Slack simulator and you had to piece it together to figure out what exactly your job is, sort of playing again with this operating system game idea. However, we didn't know how to make it fun, we didn't really know what the actual gameplay would be like, so we scrapped it. We also had an idea of some sort of drawing game where you have to draw a given shape but make sure that the thing that you draw loops on itself properly. However, we weren't really sure what the tools for that would be like. The image recognition would be kind of a pain to make, so we decided to scrap that one as well. We liked our music idea, we thought it would be fun, so we committed to it, and then we started making our game. So let's talk about our game making process. Now, first things first, still, of course, on Wednesday afternoon, right after the release of the theme, we started by just making our new project in Godot, setting up our GitHub repo, stuff like that. Now, we knew we would have more time over the weekend than we did over the week. We also were going to have a friend of ours joining us over the weekend. So we decided to, until then, take it easy and mostly just working on the general systems, the background, the scaffolding. Max got to work primarily on this music making software. If they couldn't get this to work by the weekend, we knew that the project might be a little over-scoped, and we decided that was to be a priority. I meanwhile focused on a lot of the rest of the scaffolding, making the email system and the shop and all sorts of things for other systems in the game. Because we decided, okay, we know that we want the player to be using short looping tracks to make music and give it to people, but what are the mechanisms for that? We decided on having a little email inbox that the player would receive requests from. And we also decided to give them some sort of shop where they could spend their earnings on new MIDI loops and new sound fonts. Additionally, we knew that we would need to have some sort of musical handbook page, because if one of the people wants an Allegro song, what BPM even is an Allegro? We knew that we would have all sorts of players, some with plenty of music theory experience and some who had never touched music theory in their lives. So we knew those would be some of our core requirements. Our music player, a way for requests to come in, our shop, and a handbook. When Max got to work on the music player, I started to work on everything else using Godot's control nodes. A control node in Godot is basically a tool for making these kinds of UI tools that are key to something like this. When we're working on a system such as this operating system type thing, we know that these UI tools that let you just place boxes on the screen and organize them in a comfortable way are going to be key. So I got to work on first learning how these control nodes work, and then just putting them down into the tree and messing with them. For example, there are nodes like these H boxes and V boxes that let you stack other control nodes in whatever way you want. We also have these margin containers that let you put margins around things, and there's button containers and textures and text and all sorts of things that we just started to stack and put deeper and deeper in layers in order to wrap everything up nicely and give it the layout that we wanted. Now, with all this work split up, we spent a few days just working on these various systems that we knew we needed piece by piece. For example, with the actual music player system, we first wanted to make sure we could actually make it play sound. We added the cells, found the right sound fonts, and meanwhile I was working on adding everything page by page. Eventually added a taskbar and the Windows background, and we decided to go with this Windows 95 style aesthetic just because we like it. Eventually we got to the weekend, and our friend Logan, who helped us out quite a bit with this game jam, joined us, having some time from his full-time job, and we cut him up and we locked in. We split up the work again. This time Logan helped us write a lot of the request emails and made many of the thumbnails for the shop, while Max finished up everything to do with the sound system and worked on most of these loop MIDIs, and I worked on everything for the shop and email, handbook, and taskbar as needed. Now, we did still cross over. Max helped with making the icons and the taskbar. Logan helped a ton with all the GitHub messes that eventually happened, and I helped with the MIDIs and some of the key emails. But we mostly tried to stay separate, so we didn't all have to know everything. The music playing system is pretty complex, and I don't know the full ins and outs of it. If I had to also learn and keep up with all of the other systems, it would have just added way too much time for us to actually be able to make the game. So we mostly split off the work, collaborated a ton on the ideas, and helped each other when we struggled with scripts or merge conflicts or things of the sort, and got to work. By the end of Saturday night, with us being due around Sunday at noon, we were pretty happy with our progress. We had all the emails, all the shop thumbnails, everything was working, the sound fonts were in, we had all the pages, and we went and we made a cute login page, and then we spent Sunday just getting everything up on itch.io. That, of course, took way longer than we anticipated, but we got everything done on time and submitted our game for the jam. So let me talk a little bit about the game itself. First, as soon as you boot up the game, you're given a login page, and the first thing you have to do is put in a little password. We thought having this Windows 95 login page would be a cute way to introduce the aesthetic and let the player have a little bit of fun from the start. So you type in your password and then you're logged in and shown your desktop. From this point on, you can access any of the different tabs, but your email is the one that has your requests. So once the player goes in, they start to look around, they get this email from mom that serves as a bit of a tutorial for a lot of the in-game systems, and then they can just start messing around. The first request is to make and submit something of at least 10 seconds, just to show that they know how to mess around with the system a little bit. And then from there, they start to get a little bit more complex. In order to keep it interesting, we decided to start making requests that ask for specific tempos and key signatures and instrumentations and styles. We wanted to make sure the player had some restrictions in order to best enable creativity. If every request to just make whatever you want was stopping a player from submitting the same song over and over again, or just using the same instruments. By having these sort of detailed requests, we forced the player to do some things and not just the same thing every time, while still allowing plenty of room for creativity and for players to just do something fun. One, I suppose, issue with the game is that, in a way, it's not for everyone, because it does require intrinsic motivation to actually have fun with it. If you want to just make the same looping track and just change the tempo and the key signature and the instruments, you can. It would be kind of lame, but we don't stop the player from doing that, because we want to make a system that encourages the player to just, in a relatively unstructured way, play around, have fun, do what they want. So that's our gameplay. We log in, you get your email requests, you mess around with the player, get more requests, you can get handbooks needed, buy better sounds when you can, and have fun. It's a relatively unstructured game that we think leans into things that we like. Making music and having fun and loose, unstructured, sandbox-like play. So that's our game, and that was our experience with the GMTK Game Jam 2025. You can go play it on itch right now. Go leave us a comment there about what you think, or a comment here. We would love to hear more about whether players actually enjoy messing around. So far, we've mostly heard from friends and family who have fun with it, but we would love to hear from you. We're considering publishing a version with fixed bugs, more sounds, and even more commitment to this Windows 95 style, but we'll have to see, as our main RPG game is still in progress, and we would absolutely love to make more progress on that. Thank you so much for checking out our game. Max will see you again next week for more of our regularly scheduled RPG game devlogs. Have a good one.